Well, more A-League games postponed, unfortunately, over this New Year's period. It is unfortunate news, but we are coming to you here with a little bit of a breaking news live stream because it has just been announced that multiple games over the New Year's Eve and New Year's Day period, that whole time, which is usually a pretty popular time in the A-League season. Me being a Mariners fan, under the New Year's Eve game, which is a regular occurrence here on the Central Coast, is always one of our most attended games. So it's really disappointing news, and we're going to break into what has come out of the A-Leagues and the stuff that they've announced now. So, look, we already knew that some games were going to be cancelled, and we can see here, of course, the games that were scheduled. Of course, December 31st, the New Year's Eve game, Central Coast Mariners MacArthur has been postponed. Some positive cases, of course, in the Mariners camp, which we knew about because the game against Phoenix was cancelled just from the 27th. On January 1st, Jets and City game has been postponed due to some positive cases in the City camp still. The two games going ahead at this stage include Adelaide and Phoenix, Wanderers taking on Western United. Now, honestly, at this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if these games get postponed as well. Just the way it's going at the moment, we just have no idea what's going to happen. And then, of course, the two games on January 2nd, Sydney FC, Perth, that was already postponed. We knew about that because Perth, of course, over in Western Australia, isolating, and they're over there. And, of course, Melbourne Victory, Brisbane Roar, which was going to go ahead, but that has been cancelled as well. Some positive cases, unfortunately, in the Brisbane camp as well. And we've got this statement that has come out here from the A-Leagues, which we'll jump into. I can see you guys in the live chat as well. Thanks for jumping in. Little Piglet says, Victory were going so well. And that's the thing. It sort of kills momentum for some of these teams as well. Hey, that's right. We're going to read this statement here, which has come out from the A-Leagues, which breaks down the recent news, which has just broken in the last hour or so. So it reads, 3 more Isuzu Ute A-League matches have been postponed due to positive COVID cases. The scheduled round 7 matches between Central Coast Mariners and MacArthur FC, due to be held on February 31st of December, has been postponed as a result of COVID-19 cases within the Central Coast Mariners team. These cases were previously announced on December 27th. And of course, as I mentioned, this is one that we already knew about. So some of these don't come as a surprise, particularly this one. And as I mentioned earlier, this game is the biggest one on the calendar for Mariners fans. It's usually so well attended. There's usually fireworks held on Gosford Waterfront afterwards. It's a big shame. It is a big shame. We've got some news on some of the other teams as well here, though. Of course, the scheduled match between Newcastle Jets and Melbourne City, due to be held on Saturday, 1st of January 2022, that's New Year's Day, of course, has been postponed as a result of positive COVID-19 cases within the Melbourne City FC team. And again, this one probably not as much a surprise because, again, City were scheduled to play Phoenix in the FFA Cup quarterfinals last week down at Casey Fields. That got postponed due to some positive cases in the City camp. So not too much of a surprise, that one as well. Continues to read here, the Melbourne City FC men's football department previously confirmed the COVID-19 cases on the 22nd of December, as I mentioned just before. And, of course, we've got some more news here. The scheduled match between Melbourne Victory and Brisbane Roar, due to be held on Sunday, the 2nd of January 2022, has also been postponed as a result of positive COVID-19 cases within the Brisbane Roar team. Left, right, and centre, it's affecting all the teams, and it's worrying signs. And of course, as the article continues to read here, Brisbane Roar team currently in isolation. We're waiting further results. And of course, we knew about the Sydney FC Perth Glory game that was postponed. It reads down here, in a statement, the A-Leagues has said the A-Leagues protocols continue to be effective for screening and subsequent PCR testing in detecting the virus and ensuring immediate isolation. Our primary concern is the health, well-being, and safety of all players, staff, and their families, of course. All positive cases and they're close and those close to them are adhering to relevant state government health directives in consultation with the A-Leagues. We will continue to work with all the clubs involved on confirming a new schedule for the postponed matches as soon as possible. And look, the thing that has me concerned the most, I think, is that, how long are we going to keep postponing matches for? Does it get to the point where the competition as a whole gets sort of shifted back a few weeks or even a month? I don't know. And we in the podcast episode which just came out yesterday, it's I was answering some we did some Q&A. You guys sent us some really good questions, and I put up a poll on YouTube as well in terms of what should we do moving forward. At the moment, the poll which just went up this morning, from the time of this video, most people wanting a bubble, and that is almost looking like it didn't even seem realistic, even like a week or two ago. The idea of a bubble, it's like no way. Like it's just like it felt like the odd games here and there being postponed, but this is now the second consecutive round where games have just been absolutely slashed left, right, and center. It's worrying signs at the moment. So when we look at the fixtures, we'll bring up these fixtures as well again. So 2 fixtures out of 6 again going ahead. And of course, I do want to bring up the fact, once again, both of these fixtures will be played at the exact same time. You'd think with the fact that there's a few days notice that they would be shifted, that you'd think they'd shift one of those games back a couple hours, which with a few days notice, I feel like wouldn't be the hardest thing to do. So Adelaide taking on Wellington Phoenix, Western Sydney Wanderers taking on Western United. Can see you guys in the chat now. Let's have a look at what you guys are saying. Lucas says, I wouldn't be surprised if the season gets postponed. I don't know if they'll postpone it. I think we obviously saw that a couple seasons ago where it got postponed, and I think that made sense because we weren't really sure what was going on with the pandemic. It was pretty early days, and season was on hold for a few months. Got into a bubble in Sydney, and finished off the final few rounds of the season. I don't know. I get the sense that they want to soldier on. And get through as many games as they can without having to postpone the season, without having to disrupt as much of the schedule. The tricky thing is trying to schedule in all these games amongst all the other rounds that are happening. And when you look at the January fixtures coming up, it already is pretty cluttered. Actually, let's bring up some of these now. If we jump to the next coming rounds, when we look at match week 8 and the games coming after that, it's all over the place because you can see here, January 5th, and then we've got some games here, January 19th, January 25th. The next few rounds are all a bit out of whack because we even have games here from match week 24, all over the place. So there's a lot of midweek games happening now. And, a bunch of A-League teams are still involved in the FFA Cup, scheduling that thing, that competition in as well. It's going to be tricky stuff as well. Hey, Chuck Me in the chat says, I just got Paramount and Sydney FC. We're starting to click. Yeah, and that's the shame too. It's like it was getting to a really exciting point in the A-League where teams were beginning to, build momentum. Being a Central Coast Mariners fan, we had 2 consecutive wins in the A-League. And then, of course, the big FFA Cup win 6-0 against Apia Leichhardt in the Cup. It's concerning at the moment in terms of not knowing what's going to happen. And I feel like we are approaching every round with a little bit of apprehension in terms of, are these games going to go ahead? And of course, as I mentioned, the 2 games currently still going ahead on New Year's Day, Adelaide taking on Phoenix and Western United taking on Western Sydney Wanderers. Look, like we saw the Mariners game the other day on the 27th. It was postponed 3 hours before kickoff, like literally 2.5 hours before the gates are open, I'm pretty sure. So we have to be on our feet now to be prepared for these games to be shuffled around. And look, of course, as they said in their statement, it's all about the health and safety of the players and the staff and the families. And of course, that goes without saying. So, yeah, man, it's worrying stuff. But what do you guys make of this in the chat? Like, are we thinking a bubble system is going to be what we need to do moving forward? If so, where does that bubble happen, We've got the football state. What's going on? The stop will have an effect on the match fitness of players. I agree. It will. It certainly will be detrimental for sure. Hey, Little Piglet says, I would rather have at least 1 game a week than none. The thing is as well, it's different as well. I find watching games behind closed doors. That's a thing that has been proposed, and yeah, it sort of kills the atmosphere as well. So yeah, it's a big shame. Hey, it's a big shame. Yeah, man, I'm a little bit worried in terms of these upcoming rounds, And Dr. Dingo raises a good point. I see, Dr. Dingo, your message from a couple of minutes ago sucks. It's during holidays when I can usually go to more games. And yeah, that's the thing. This is the worst period for it to be happening because it's, as you mentioned there, a lot of people on holidays, on break. During this season, attendances generally get a bit of a boost because people are going to these games and are able to get out to these games. So it's happening at the worst time as well. Chuck Meat says, I would have it, the bubble. I would have the bubble in Sydney because majority of the teams, that's where the majority of the teams are. It makes the most sense. There's 5 teams in New South Wales when you look at Newcastle, Macarthur, Mariners, Sydney and Wanderers. So yeah. Alpex says they should postpone the A-League so rounds don't fall behind. And that's the thing as well. I mean, they have to weigh up, is this going to be happening for the next couple months where there's just games postponed? And I feel like if it's going to get that messy, if it's going to be so messy like that over the next month or whatever it is, who knows? I mean, that's the thing. That's a tricky thing. No one knows the future. Then maybe they do have to consider just putting it on hold, shifting it back, waiting for things to settle down a little bit, hopefully. Yeah, man. Mowing says, I reckon the bubble might turn even more active support away. Yeah, that's of course an unfortunate byproduct of going to the bubble. Hey, Dr. Dingo says the games in the bubble have no momentum or excitement. Look, I have to agree. Like when we think back to, a year and a half ago when we played the end of the 1920 season in that bubble, it just didn't have the same vibe. It didn't have the same excitement around it. I know what you mean. Lax says the stop might allow for younger players to break through. Interesting. Look, it's certainly it's certainly something we'll keep an eye on in the future. But look, I just wanted to jump on here live because this is obviously big news, and it's developing news as well. The fact that these games are getting postponed left, right, and center, and as I mentioned, we have to stay on our feet, and hopefully the people in charge can get things sorted out sooner rather than later. I wonder whether these games, when they reschedule these postponed games, whether that'll be happening like real soon, like squeeze them into midweek, or whether they'll sort of tag them on towards the end. I don't know. The other thing as well that I want to bring up is that I find it difficult. I don't know if you guys agree in the chat right now. Like, I find it difficult when, if you look at the ladder, there's, even at the moment, the top 3 teams, Victory, Macarthur, Western have all played 6 games. And then you look at Perth and Brisbane, only 4 games. It makes it tricky to follow a competition. It's a similar thing in the Premier League. I find it tricky to follow a competition, not to follow it, but to sort of compare teams when they're matching up, knowing that a certain team has, 2 or 3 games in hand. You know what I mean? It sort of doesn't give you a true reflection of the form because some teams have played more games and you get to think, even if they lose, they still have games in hand. So there's stuff like that as well. So look, it's worrying stuff at the moment, and hopefully you guys are all staying safe and well wherever you are tuning in from as well. So we'll make sure to keep you guys updated on everything. But thanks for jumping into this live stream. Hopefully we can have some football happening real soon. We do have these 2 games going ahead on New Year's Day, and I do also want to just before tuning off say that the content is going to look a little bit different. If you guys have been watching the channel for a little bit, usually every single Thursday, we do the round predictions videos where I preview the rounds. That's sort of going to be a little bit on hold at the moment, considering that we don't have many games going ahead, and probably similarly for the round reviews. There will probably be some live stream videos happening to touch on the games, of course, but it's not necessarily going to be the same sort of format that we're usually seeing. Hey, one more. Well, I'll answer one more final question here because Football Status just asked: should the league get postponed altogether, in your opinion? Oh, dude, it's hard. Honestly, I don't have like a set opinion purely because we don't know what it's going to look like in like a few weeks or a month's time. As I just mentioned before, if this keeps happening, where games, if every single round, if more than half of the games are being postponed, I think we need to pause the season. I think we just have to, because it's just going to get way too chaotic. There's already, we saw. In the past week now, we had 3 FFA Cup games cancelled on the Wednesday before Christmas. We only had 2 games go ahead from the last round in the other men's competition from round 6, and at the moment only two games going ahead in this upcoming round. And honestly, wouldn't be surprised if they get postponed too. So it feel like it makes sense maybe just to pause for a couple of weeks, and whether they do shift things back, we'll have to wait and see. we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully everything plays out. Everything chills out, and we can get back to normality. Because the start of the season it felt pretty normal, didn't it? Like we were off and running and felt pretty smooth, and yeah, it's a shame that this has happened again. So, as I mentioned, we'll keep you guys updated on everything. Thanks for tuning into this live stream, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic week.